Tonight, Canada hosts high-stakes talks for peace while fighting rages on in the Middle East. Israeli troops hunt down Hamas, sizing down the safe zone for Palestinians.
I mean, look at this.
Global climate talks heat up over ending the use of oil.
Well, there's very strong opinions on both sides of this question.
And the reality of warming weather hits home. BC confirms its worst ever fire season. Plus, keeping an eye on AI.
We put forward the AI Act,
building boundaries for artificial intelligence.
CTV National News with Heather Butts. Reporting tonight, Mirella Fernandez.
Good evening. There is no sign of a break in the Middle East war tonight, but talk of peace was the focus of foreign ministers in Ottawa. Melanie Joly hosted representatives from the Palestinian Authority, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey. All have a keen interest in seeing an end to the Israel-Hamas war. They spoke about the humanitarian catastrophe as well. United Nations officials say half of Gaza's population is starving. There is simply no safe way to get aid into the Strip, with Israel bombing the south. CTV's Jeremy Charon reports.
As dusk settled, smoke billowed over Gaza. After a day that started with dramatic scenes like this, a fight to put out soaring flames, this Khan Yunis home was hit by an airstrike. Renewed calls by the Israeli military today to evacuate this southern region, a day after the U.S. used its veto power to block a call for a ceasefire in Gaza at the UN. This veto is against the people who are dying in shellings all day and all night with American weapons, said this Palestinian. I really appreciate the correct position that the United States has taken, said Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The bombarding raged on today, Israeli warplanes striking Gaza as attacks intensified again, including in the south where displaced Palestinians have been seeking refuge. This is the aftermath in Rafah, people searching the rubble for victims and survivors following an overnight airstrike.
You have to stop this genocide, you have to stop this forced displacement, you have to stop the killing of the innocents. I mean, look at this. Look at this. Only the view is talking.
Only limited aid has been entering Gaza. Today, people climb this truck at the Rafah border crossing in a desperate attempt to get anything they can.
People are living now in everyday smaller and smaller area where they are pushed in and in a big groups, lacking clean water, lacking sanitation.
Allahu Akbar. Funerals like this, a daily occurrence. Health officials in Gaza say 2 hospitals received the bodies of more than 130 people in the last 24 hours. Meanwhile, in Tel Aviv, thousands gathered to demand the release of Israeli hostages still held captive.
Now tonight, Israeli officials say a 25-year-old hostage has been killed by Hamas, but didn't confirm any further details. Hamas says he was killed during a failed Israeli rescue attempt. Mirella?
CTV's Jeremy Charon. At the climate conference in Dubai, nations are bickering over fossil fuels. At least 80 countries want to see an agreement that calls for an end to the use of dirty energy. But in the oil-rich country where the talks are taking place, there is powerful pressure to keep that kind of language out of a final deal. CTV's Colton Prail reports.
In the dying days of COP28, a deadline to decide the future of fossil fuels looms.
We are making progress, but not fast enough and not satisfying enough.
Saturday, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries pushing back against calls to move on from oil and gas after they reportedly sent a letter to its member nations to oppose any motion that targets fossil fuel production.
We need realistic approaches to tackle emission.
In Canada, new regulations targeting fossil fuels are also facing heavy scrutiny.
Our walks the talk.
A near 30-hour marathon session of Parliament, the latest example of the Conservative fight against Liberal climate policies.
The reality is that people are clearly focused on meat and potatoes issues. Speaks to why the Conservatives did this filibuster.
Prairie provinces have been quick to critique Ottawa's new regulations targeting the release of methane and capping emissions in the oil and gas sector.
There's no question that if they continue on this path, it will end up with court. And I think we will win.
But government says they're confident they would survive a legal challenge.
We're putting in place a mechanism that's tackling climate change pollution, greenhouse gas emissions, and not the production of oil and gas.
And as pressure mounts on the Liberals to tackle fossil fuel emissions, environmentalists say the success of COP28 hinges on a clear statement condemning their use.
This should be the beginning of the end of fossil, and we all have to acknowledge that whether we produce oil, consume oil or not.
The climate summit wraps up Tuesday, and the draft resolutions already contain a number of possibilities. Anything from the complete phase-out of fossil fuels to nothing at all about their future. Morella.
Colton's in Ottawa tonight. BC's wildfire service confirms that 2023 was the most destructive wildfire season it has ever seen. More than 2,200 wildfires burned more than 2.8 million hectares of forest and land between April 1st and October 31st.
We had multiple fires throughout the province blow up. These are days where firefighting is not possible.
For 28 days, BC was under a provincial state of emergency. Hundreds of homes and structures were lost or damaged.
We were able to lean into some of our international partners the way we did, which is pretty crazy when you step back and look at how long that is, being away from your family, being away from your work, being everything that you value in your lives, stepping away to help.
In the chaos of that firefight, 6 firefighters lost their lives.
It was tough for everybody, and I think we all struggle in going through it.
There were some pretty big losses over the season, and that weighs heavily on people.
BC's wildfire service expects communities will continue to feel the devastating impacts in the months to come. The forecasting of climate-related disasters could be improved by the use of artificial intelligence. The European Union today became the first to unveil a comprehensive set of rules outlining how AI should be used, and it could be used as a blueprint for Canada and the rest of the world. CTV's Tony Grace has the list of do's and don'ts.
Good night, everyone.
It's a task so timely they were almost losing sleep over it.
I can definitely say that it has been worth the few hours of sleep, the nerves, and all the time we have spent these days.
European Union negotiators agreeing on new rules to regulate artificial intelligence.
A balance between protection and innovation. Not many people thought that this was possible.
The agreement tightens controls on high-risk AI systems like those in health, safety, and elections, limits when police can use facial recognition technology, bans workplaces and schools from using emotion recognition, and outlaws using AI for social scoring, extortion, or manipulation, with fines starting at $8 million.
This is the best effort yet that we've seen to at least minimize the potential for these kinds of negative outcomes.
This tech analyst expects the EU agreement will put developers and users on notice, reduce the likelihood of abuse, and be a blueprint for Canada's effort, Bill C-27, still going through Parliament.
But at least now we have a target to shoot for.
Automatically design and
one expert telling MPs this week, based on AI's current trajectory, the stakes are high.
If it's illegal to publish instructions on how to make bioweapons or nuclear bombs, it should be illegal to publish AI models that can be downloaded and used by anyone to generate those same instructions for a few $100.
Meanwhile, from political attack ads to pop culture pranks to the popular ChatGPT application, and now
various sizes and capabilities.
Google unveiling its own AI model, the frontier keeps expanding.
Is this the law catching up to tech?
In many respects, this is the law trying to catch up to technology. We all know that that gap will never be fully closed.
And even the rush to regulate a fast-moving sector comes with a time delay. The EU agreement is not expected to be law until at least 2025. Morella.
A beginning. Thanks, Tony. Appreciate that. A human rights group is sounding the alarm over a surge in deportation of undocumented people. An average of 39 people are removed from Canada every day. That's a 3-year high. CTV's Jill Makashon has more on that.
Human rights advocates believe there are as many as 500,000 undocumented people living and working in Canada right now, people who have lived here for years and face deportation.
Basically, all I remember, all the good memories that I have are here, and all the friends that I've actually kept all these years are here.
Tarek Asbadnade has called Canada home for 8 years. His parents work here, his siblings go to school. In August, the family was told they would be deported. His parents to Chile, this 19-year-old to the West Bank.
How is it just for them to, one, separate a family and send them to two different countries that are particularly dangerous?
Canada Border Services Agency information obtained by a legal advocacy group in Toronto shows deportation is on the rise in Canada, from an average of 21 deportations per day in 2021 to 39 in 2023.
Almost twice as many people are being deported. Over 7,000 deportations took place in the first half of 2023 alone.
Advocates want the federal government to commit to a promise made 2 years ago to bring in a program which would help undocumented people who have lived and worked in Canada for years apply and stay as permanent residents.
And it is incredibly absurd and unfair that people are being deported today who may be regularized tomorrow.
Canada's immigration minister noted the deportation data was gathered during COVID years when there were more restrictions in place. Mark Miller said he is committed to a plan in the months ahead.
And it's something that I've committed to take in front of Cabinet in the spring, but it isn't a foregone conclusion, and it is not one that comes without cost.
For a family now waiting, the biggest cost is their future.
So we contribute a lot to our society or our city. Yet they don't see that injustice.
Jill Makashon, CTV News, Winnipeg.
It's being called a new normal, a spike in seasonal illnesses that include COVID, but also other viral and bacterial infections that are making a comeback. All of it takes a toll on our healthcare system, already overextended. CTV's Kamal Karamali reports.
It's being called the new norm, the return of a spike of illnesses we haven't seen since before the pandemic.
The list of respiratory viruses and other infections that are circulating this time of year is longer than my arm.
In Ontario, COVID-19 still leading the pack, with RSV and influenza A not far behind, but a concoction of other viral and bacterial infections all in circulation.
We have a lot of patients waiting for being offloaded from ambulances. So I'll come to a shift and there's a dozen ambulances outside waiting.
Dr. Kashif Prasada says it's primarily seniors and young children being brought in at his emergency department.
I'm really worried about the holiday season, especially when primary care clinics close.
Some of those closures happening all year round. In Clinton, Ontario, this hospital's emergency department closed overnight every night since 2019.
I liken it to Russian roulette. Sooner or later, it's going to catch up with us and it's going to cost somebody their life.
In Ontario, hospital services have had to close nearly 1,200 times this year. Emergency departments experienced over 800 temporary closures, one of them permanent, and more than 300 instances of urgent care centers closing.
This is ludicrous. While they're in a medical emergency, they're supposed to shop around and find an open emergency department? That is staggering.
Much of that pressure on hospitals because many don't have a family doctor. The Canadian Medical Association Journal shows roughly 1 in 5 Canadians, that's about 6.5 million people, don't have a family physician. Advocates now renewing calls for more hospital staffing. Marilla?
All right, Camp, thanks for that. Healthcare workers in Quebec face big changes with a massive reform bill being passed by the National Assembly. Bill 15 creates a new provincial agency that will handle day-to-day operations in all hospitals and healthcare facilities.
This big change today that we have been able to vote will make a big difference in the life of Quebecers.
But opposition members say the bill doesn't improve access to healthcare for Quebecers.
Why or didn't he act on the real problems rather than start up a major change that's not going to have positive effect?
Some in Quebec's English-speaking community say the changes could restrict access to bilingual services. Coming up, the chilling reality of the homeless crisis.
I'm scared, they're scared,
We don't know what's going to be next.
As temperatures drop, the number of people living on the streets is rising. Living on the street comes with great risk, but the danger is higher when the colder weather settles in. Which it has in Halifax. That's where a fire broke out at this encampment. A tent that was once a home, now just a charred shell.
I guess one of the heaters, something fell into it and caught on fire. And it all went up in probably 13, 14 seconds, all gone.
With so many cities and towns facing a homeless crisis, critics are calling for change. CTV's Atlantic Bureau Chief Kristen Ashkute reports.
For more than 5 years, Joel Probert has been homeless, usually sleeping in a tent or in his car.
Nobody wants to be here. Nobody wants to be cold. Nobody wants to be homeless.
Probert worked as a paramedic but had to step away after suffering from PTSD from his job and suddenly losing his sister. He is staying in this homeless encampment in front of Halifax City Hall, receiving support and hopes to find an affordable place soon.
Deal with the stresses of life without it triggering me, and I hope to go back to work. I've been a healthcare worker for 26 years.
There are now more than 1,000 people who are homeless in Halifax, with many shelters full. Renovictions, unaffordable housing, addiction, and mental health issues are just some of the reasons why people are sleeping in the cold.
We need all levels of government to be really advocating and pushing for, some deeply affordable housing, because without that, people are going to be living in tents for a long time.
Stephen Wilsack organized the donation of more than 20 life-saving ice fishing huts after a recent heavy snowfall.
People's lives are at stake. This is dangerous. We should not be out here. I'm scared, they're scared. We don't know what's going to be next.
Last week, a man died at this homeless encampment in Dartmouth, with friends saying it may have been from carbon monoxide poisoning while using a propane tank to keep warm. Wilsack says more could die if the homeless are not housed soon.
This is a state of emergency. We need help. So let's stop talking. Let's start doing action.
CTV News requested an interview with the city of Halifax, but no one was made available. In October, Nova Scotia says it's spending $7.5 million on 200 single-room pallet shelters, with half of it for Halifax. But the homes won't be ready until next year. For now, Wilsack says it will be up to the community to help the homeless, while help from the government is still many months away. Kristen Ashkate, CTV News, Halifax.
Straight ahead, celebrating the season maritime style. A man-made tree that links land and sea. There is a unique high-tech take on the holidays in Western Canada. Temple B'nai Tikva in Calgary marked the second day of Hanukkah by going green, lighting a menorah using an array of solar panels. It is the first temple in Western Canada to use solar energy to power its building. On the East Coast, the holiday symbols are a little more low-tech. CTV's Sarah Plowman explains.
Bringing home a big catch likely tops a lot of wish lists. In St. Andrews, there's one elf on this shelf that used to be full of lobster.
A local artist does these ones.
These are buoys, dozens of them, from the sea and of the sea.
There you go.
Tied to lobster traps stacked 14 layers high, like a Christmas tree.
It's symbolic to the East Coast and who we are as people. So we know it's a kid's one, so we don't want to put it at the top of the tree.
They're painted and playful.
Montreal Canadiens one, sad that we put it on there, but we got it on there.
Made with love to honor loved ones who've passed.
All of them are important.
Each decoration equals a donation. $30 for the food bank.
I know a lot of people think about presents under the tree, but it's also a time to give and to help out people that aren't as fortunate as you might be.
This 7-year tradition was inspired by neighbors in Nova Scotia. In Barrington, many buoys touch on tragedy, all too familiar here.
it tells stories of those who have been lost at sea and those who have since passed on and those that are still fishing aboard the boat, today.
A symbol of life on the ocean.
While it's a huge part of our backbone, it's a big part of the economy in Nova Scotia and the Maritimes.
Some cardinals on here and a nice beautiful eagle.
Each tree is topped with a lighthouse.
Magical, it's community, it's what people need after a couple of years of COVID and being stuck inside.
Linking a community and the sea that shapes it. Sarah Plowman, CTV News, St. Andrews, New Brunswick.
After the break, shining bright. A quick fix to help light up the holiday spirit. Burned out bulbs on the Christmas string of lights, no big deal for a BC girl. The 10-year-old is a whiz with all things electrical, her passion powered by a desire to bring some holiday cheer. CTV's Adam Sawatsky has her story.
Alina Junkala's bedroom is decorated with two prominent collections.
They are so cute.
The first features the red panda, her favorite animal, with a caveat.
They're very sleepy and lazy.
Qualities the 10-year-old can't connect with at all.
I am the opposite of sleepy and lazy.
Which brings us to Alina's second collection, broken lamps.
I'm not obsessed, but I like fixing them.
For as long as Rob Junkala can recall, his daughter's been a can-do kind of kid.
She really enjoyed any time I pulled the tool out. She wanted to get in there. And
while learning to use her dad's tools to build things felt good, mastering how to use her own tools to fix things felt even better.
It's always a mystery to see if it's gonna work.
And solving that mystery feels the best.
It makes me feel like I did that.
But to appreciate what Alina says is the bestest of the best feeling, we need to go back to that day she asked her dad, who's a professional electrician, if he had any work for her.
Because I was broke. I didn't have any money.
So, Rob helped her post a message on social media saying she had spent her last $80 buying her own tools and was now available to fix broken lamps.
the reaction to the post was enormous.
After earning hundreds of positive comments, ranging from praise for her work ethic to a promise to break something just so she could fix it, Alina's in the process of repairing more than 30 lamps and counting.
It makes me feel really happy.
Because Alina's realized her ultimate goal of earning enough to spend her own money to buy Christmas presents for her family.
The most excited I've seen her is when she finds the favorite thing that she knows her brothers want.
Because if you ask Alina to rank cuddling red pandas, solving electrical mysteries, and giving Christmas presents,
Giving presents.
giving back after working hard wins every time. Adam Sawatsky, CTV News, Qualicum Beach.
That's a wrap on the day. I'm Morella Fernandez. For all of us here at CTV National News, thanks for sharing your time with us tonight. We'll see you again tomorrow.